Alright, so I'm ready to go. Hello everyone, this is Cs.SuperCumulo, and today I bring you one of the most recent games from the Free-for-All Masters Leagues Season 27. This is a game from yesterday, Sunday, uh, March 11th of 2018, and the map is called La Rosa Náutica. It's a map that I created in December, and it has been played constantly during the holidays. And I received a lot of feedback from the community, so I did some improvements, and I think that it was finally accepted as a very well map, very balanced with lots of opportunities for everyone. So it was incorporated for this season. As for the players, we're gonna have our standard four-way FML game, FFA game, and we're gonna start off with the, let's see, with the 11 o'clock position. We have LS Bomber. He's a player from Peru. He's playing with the Undead race. I believe this is his main race, but he can also play Orc and perhaps another race. But nevertheless, Undead is his strongest race. He's a newcomer. He joined the league this season, and he also joined with a couple of his clanmates. So he's very new, and he probably doesn't have a lot of understanding about how free-for-all is played. Nevertheless, we should expect him to at least provide some entertainment because he comes from a solo background. Then at the 1 o'clock position, we have the Truman Show, who is from Germany. His main race is Orc, I believe, and he has played in FML a couple of times before. I believe the last time I saw him was in season 23 or maybe season 24. But he did okay. I think he won maybe 2 games or 1 game, but overall he was an okay player. He managed to give a tough time to some of the top players back then, such as Soso and J33. Alright, so then we follow to the 7 o'clock position or 8 o'clock, which is me, SuperCumulo, and I usually play human for the most part. And yeah, I made this map. Well, here I am. Then at the 9 o'clock we have Belfort, who is from France. He has also played FML for quite some time, probably since, I don't know, since before season 21. But he's a solid player. He knows what to do, how to do it. He's gonna go for the fast expansion as usual right here. So now that I have introduced the players, I will continue with the characteristics of the map. The map is an 8-way map, so 8 people can play on this map. These spawns are not fixed. As you can see, Yellow or Belfort was surrounded, and he's gonna try to possibly expand here and then break out against either the Undead player or against me. In this case, for example, the Yellow player, since he's surrounded and I did scout him, I saw that he was right above me at the 9 o'clock, so I did ask if the expansions were going to be counterclockwise, and he agreed to this because I think it is easier for Yellow to expand counterclockwise than to expand clockwise. So if, for example, Yellow were to expand clockwise, he would have to go here at the expansion at the center of the map. And since I am at the 7 o'clock, counterclockwise would be here, but here there is no gold mine, so I have to go to the center of the map. So if all players agree where to go to expand, then the game should be just fine. I mean, there should be no problems in who is expanding where. Okay, so now with some of the characteristics of the map is that there are 8 gold mines for the 8 starting positions. I'm sorry, there are 8 expansions, so basically in a full 8-way FFA, every player gets an expansion. But if there is a 4-way FFA, then players can get up to 3 expansions. This is almost like a Twilight Ruins map, and I actually decided to do a similar type of Twilight, but in a smaller version, a version where people can still hoard to some extent, but they would be driven to engage much earlier on because of the distance between the starting positions. For example, Belfort is surrounded, and the distance between the 11 o'clock from the undead space to the 9 o'clock, the human space, is very short. So anyone can be rushed immediately, even without an expansions. So people have to take that into account. While in Twilight Ruins, the map is it's not huge, gigantic, but it's still big enough to be for people to discourage them from playing very aggressive early on. And your expansions are much safer. Air units have more weight; they are valued more. So here on this map, I think that the way I intended this map to be was as if it were an assault type of map where people just go on top of each other as soon as they can, as soon as they think it can work out. And perhaps that's maybe one of the reasons why this particular game is not a very long game. In fact, it's quite short, and that's one of the reasons why I'm making this shoutcast. In any case, as for the name of the, I mean, okay, so basically this shoutcast is about mostly the map, but also about the players, and maybe a little bit about the season in general. But for the map so far, for example, here we see that LS Bomber, who comes from a solo background, is playing aggressively against the human player who is an FFA player. So we see here that Belfort is trying to save some of his footmen, and now his Archmage is gonna probably get blocked by the Fiend, and the Undead might get a kill. Yes, he got the kill. So this early type of aggression is not very common in free for all these days, and if someone does this to you, then you would most likely want revenge. And since Belfort is one of those players who usually fears undeads, or maybe doesn't like the undead race, he will most likely rush this player, which will give me some time to expand myself, get a second expansion, and maybe even get a third expansion later on. In any case, based on the positions, I think that the Orc, the one at the 1 o'clock position, is safer. He has his economy going up. Right now he only has 80 gold, but he has one expansion right here, almost about to go up, and this other expansion right here at the center. So he has a Shredder and 2 possible expansions very, very soon. So that's gonna be good for him. He's gonna have a lot of gold and resources, and he's basically alone at the corner of the map. Now, here at the center there is a tavern, and there are 4 market goblin merchants, so people can, so each player in theory should get one of those, and that is exactly what I decide to do here. I decide to go for this goblin merchant, and it's not that easy to creep, but it drops some interesting items, especially against, for example, I think it drops bracer or boots of agility +6. Here we see that the undead is going to the 1 o'clock, and he's gonna go on the upper side, like right above these waterfalls, and he's gonna find the Orc creeping, and I wonder if they're gonna engage. Possibly they will. I don't know. Does the undead have a second here? Not yet. So if they fight, I think it will go in favor of the Orc, because the Orc can just right click the Death Knight. As for their macro, as we can see here, the undead is a little bit defensive. He has spirit towers already. Even his expansion has some spirit towers, which is something that we don't usually see from FFA players. Free-for-all players usually leave their expansions very vulnerable unless they, I don't know, unless they have experienced some early aggression from other games. But here Belfort has 0 towers in his expansion. I also don't have any towers in my expansion. The Orc has 0 towers in his expansion. In fact, people usually prioritize the defense in their main base, because that's where most of your economy is based. You know, your buildings, your burrows, all of that, and I think it's safer to protect your main base than your expansions. In any case, we see here that Belfort is going for the standard rifle caster army, and I think that he might be going to hit the undead. Here I'm still creeping my. I'm sorry. I'm still creeping the middle part of the map. And as for the human, I'm sorry. As for the Orc and the undead, they are still battling each other. The Orc decided to creep this 12 o'clock gold mine, which has some really strong creeps, so it's not that easy to creep it, and that is going to allow the undead to perhaps coil a couple of units, but at the same time we see that the yellow human Belfort is attacking this expansion, so which was recently put up. So this expansion will most likely go down, and then the undead will have to produce some units, either fiends, destroyers, or something else. But he really only has 2 creeps, so this isn't going to be enough for him. As for the economy for each player, let's see. Belfort does have 200 gold, and this undead player only has 400. The orc has 1.8k gold, and he's probably gonna continue to be at 50 for some time. I have 3k gold, and I'm starting to get some units right now. Probably some air griffins, most likely. Yep. Okay, so basically, yellow and purple are going to fight, while me and the Truman Show are going to creep the rest of the map. The map is built in a sense that most players will get up to heroes, two heroes level 4 and 1 hero level 3, something like that, similar to Twilight Ruins. So here we see that I'm creeping my bottom, the 6 o'clock expansion, while yellow and purple are fighting each other, and orange is actually going to creep the corner part of the map, where he's gonna find a marketplace and possibly buy some items. So going back to the fight here, we see that Belfort is actually going with tanks and creep and casters and mortars and rifles, and he should be able, in theory, he should be able to break through this. But the undead is gonna coil and know about the mortars, which are the main units that do damage to the buildings. So if the undead can prevent the mortars from bringing down these buildings, then I think he should be fine. There should be no problem for him defending this, especially with the spirit towers and just hitting units and going back, like hiding. At the same time, we see that Belfort is putting up an expansion here in the center of the map, and he's gonna have now his second expansion, while me and the orange orc player, we've had our second expansion for quite some time already. So the Truman Show here is creeping some of these water elementals, sea elementals, and he's gonna get up to levels 2, 3, and 4. Here, I don't know if he bought some items. Maybe he did buy items. Oh, god damn it, not now. Alright, whatever. Okay, so basically, he's gonna continue creeping most of the map. That's what I was doing, and yeah, and Belfort here continues to push the main base, but in terms of gold, I think that is going in favor of Belfort. But Belfort's actually, never mind, they are about the same. They both have 300 gold, so it's not even it's not like Belfort has a huge advantage. Now with the tanks, I think he should be able to roll in and just end Bomber, but maybe he doesn't have enough firepower to do it. Maybe he's just waiting for better units such as Griffins or something else. Let's see. Well, he doesn't have Griffin aviaries, but he does have a lot of workshops, so maybe he's just gonna roll in with the tanks. He still has some footmen, no, only one footman, but this army, even though it seems strong against this many ghouls, fiends, I think Bomber should be fine as long as he stays in the back of his base. He's now adding one destroyer. Maybe that's gonna make a difference. In the meantime, we see that I was still creeping here with my Panda, Paladin, and Archmage. I mean, since there was really no need for me and Belfort to fight, then and the Orc was on the other side of the map, then probably I felt confident that I had no real danger anytime soon. So here I'm creeping the corner expansion. I'm sorry, the corner creep camp, which has a marketplace, and at the same time we see that the undead is adding a mid wagon and a couple of air units, and he's gonna try to recover his lost expansion. At the same time, the orc has already levels 4, 5, almost 3 and 3, and he's putting up he just placed his third expansion. So me and the orc are about the same in terms of expansions, possibly in terms of gold also, and maybe levels. Here we see that Belfort is now, he TP to defend this attack from the undead player, from Bomber. Bomber is probably gonna try to kite with the fiends and destroyers and everything. Let's see how that turns out. I mean, the Paladin is very vulnerable at level 1, so he will probably go down, and he does go down. This army, even though Belfort did have the advantage, this army isn't gonna be enough, especially with MK level 1 and tanks. I mean, he does have a lot of tanks, but that's not really the army you need unless you just wanna roll inside the undead space. Belfort only now with an Archmage, and now Yande is bringing the ghouls, so that's gonna be quite difficult for Belfort to defend. Even though he has a lot of anti-air, really the ghouls alone can deal with the spellbreakers and the fiends, and the right click will just be able to kill the Archmage and possibly the priest. Not to mention that apparently Belfort didn't have a ATP, so now Belfort is actually losing. He lost his heroes, and now he's gonna lose some of his tanks and maybe units as well. At the same time, we see here that well, these two guys are going to continue fighting. This expansion will probably fall, and after that, yeah, the Undead will most likely recover his expansion. In the meantime, we see that I was at 80, possibly, yes, 79. So I was at 80, and I was still creeping. I mean, since these two guys were fighting, and I believe I did a scout with a gyrocopter at some point. Since they were fighting, and I knew that I had to fight the other guy so that it wasn't going to become a long three-way, I decided to break 50 and attack the orc to see how strong he really was. And the orc, since the orc spotted me with his sentry ward, he decided to also break 50 and go, I believe, up to 100. So here I am at 80 and he's at 100, and we're gonna fight soon. Here at the same time we see that the undead is defending against these many tanks, and it looks like it might go in favor of the undead after all. The human will lose most of his griffins, most of his units, tanks, but he's also gonna retaliate with his few heroes. And in the meantime, I am here attacking the Orcs expansion, the Truman Show's expansion, and the Truman Show is gonna come from behind, I believe, but he's gonna bring some bats first, and maybe even use this spell with the Shadow Spirit Walker. Sorry. So here we have an engagement between 80 versus 100, and I believe I lost most of it. I lost most of my griffins immediately, and the wyverns just did tremendous amount of damage to my griffins, and I lost nearly everything and killed very little. So that fight really did go in favor of the orc. The orc was at 100, and he did an okay job there. As for the human and the undead, they are still fighting here. Breakers with tanks versus destroyers, frostworms, and fiend, and a fiend. Let's see how this fight continues. Even the acolytes are fighting, which is kind of funny. In the meantime, we do have 3 heroes against only a couple of breakers and a paladin, so maybe this is going in favor of the undead after all. The undead does have only 1 expansion, while Belfort does have 2 expansions, so maybe Belfort will eventually defeat the undead because of the extra income, while the undead struggles just to keep his 1 expansion. We do see that the undead is gaining levels though, level 5, 3, and 2, and 3, sorry. So maybe the undead is just going to be fine for now, but in the long run I would assume that the undead loses the game because of the extra income from the human. So we see here that the orc is moving south. He's probably gonna go for my expansions. Yep, he does go for my expansions. I believe he's at 100. Is he at 100? No, he's at 89. But he does have a strong army, a very scary army. Just casters and wyverns, the usual orc army composition that just annihilates anything really. In the meantime, I do have, I believe I'm at 80. I was at 75 or so, but I was foot blocked because he killed my expansion here, so I had to act fast, or I was going to probably get demolished by the mass wyvern army. In any case, I did hit this expansion that he was building, and I was gonna go for another expansion as well. And both of us have about the same amount of gold. He has 4,000, and I have, well, never mind, I have 10,000 somehow. But I was more concerned about the amount of army that he had, because his previous army did beat my 80, so now I was a little bit afraid that possibly he would beat me again, and if that was the case, then it was going to be difficult to get back, because I only had 14 lumber and I was also full blocked, so this was a very tough position for me to decide what to do. In any case, I did go for this expansion, and then I believe I proceeded to his main base. In the meantime, we see that the undead is still fighting Belfort. Belfort now adding Griffins and a Dragonhawk with breakers and still more tanks. So he's gonna probably go for this expansion and try to erase it once and for all. Now the orc goes to my main base, and he's at 90 population while I was at 66 somehow. So I was fighting with these many griffins, and I believe the orc TP to defend. Yes, the orc does TP to defend. He didn't want to risk anything, and the problem with the orc here is that his air got out of position, and with the Breath of Fire and Blizzard, that allowed me to basically get rid of most of his air. I think this was a bad position for him to fight. I was able to heal my units, and he really didn't stand a chance against the Blizzard and Breath of Fire. So the orc basically lost nearly everything, but he still had gold and lumber to recover. Nevertheless, the advantage of fighting in your base is that you can still produce pump units and continue to fight, so you should be fine in the long run. If this battle continues here, then I would most likely lose most of my units while he continues to produce. So I believe here I did lose my hero and a couple of griffins, and after that, once I realized that I was fighting with the towers and he continued to produce bats and wyverns, I had to TP out, otherwise I would have lost everything else. So, going back to the undead and the human Belfort, the human apparently was just steamrolling the undead. The undead had no way to defend against all of this. Even with his extra expansion here, he had no lumber, and he was going to lose against Belfort. So at this point, I believe I decided to scout with a gyrocopter. The undead does TP out of here, and he goes to his expansion, but he will lose the remaining of his main base. Alright, so let's see. I do have a gyrocopter here, so I think I'm gonna see what's up with Belfort and decide how he's and decide if he is a new threat or if he's still busy with his 1v1. Alright, so at this point I didn't have any expansions, and the orc did have one expansion, two expansions right here, another expansion here, yeah, and he's building another one. So the orc has 3 expansions, but he doesn't have as much gold as I do. He has 1,000 and I have 8,000, so he does have the expansions going on for him. I do scout this right here that the human is winning against the orc, so I'm sorry, against the undead. So I decide to peace with the orc so that I can do something to help the undead, because I don't want Belfort to have a strong hero levels and potentially mass TP in my base. That will be very difficult to handle, especially against mass tanks, because at this point I didn't have any team mortars, and I had very low lumber, only 300. So I decided to attack yellow just to slow him down a little bit and maybe give the undead room to recover. But at this point he was nearly dead. He only had, well, I mean, he had almost no base, and then there was harassing the human. So I do come here to attack the farms just to foot block him, and the human Belfort decides to TP to defend because he cannot really afford to continue losing this many farms or buildings. He does TP, and I believe we do fight here. He has mass tanks and a couple of airs and also spell breakers, but the Blizzard and the Breath of Fire does a lot of damage to all of these units clustered together like this. So I do decide to back a little bit and then reposition. The advantage the disadvantage of using tanks is that they are quite slow, and they are not really that they don't have a fast movement speed, so you can actually kite them very well with AoE. In any case, the undead comes here to help because I guess he was butthurt that he did lose the 1v1. The MK is only level 1, and the Archmage will also level 5. So in theory, the human doesn't have really hero levels. He just lost both of his expansions, and now he's gonna get teamed by the undead and possibly me. I believe after this I kind of wanted to peace with Belfort because I did slow him down, and that's all I really wanted to do. But At this point, I wanted to see if he was still strong, because he did have his Archmage level 5, so I was a little bit afraid of mass tanks, mass TP, so I came back to attack him, and at this point is when Belfort just decided to leave the game. I guess um, he didn't want to continue playing after having to having fought the undead for some time, and then me coming from behind just to finish him off. So now that the human is gone, all I have to do in order to win the game is either kill the orc or maybe go against the undead, try to finish the undead. I wasn't sure how the undead was going to react, because the undead was clearly clearly dead, but I don't know if he wanted to play for hide and seek or try to help the orc, something like that. He did try to get away with his acolytes, but I made sure to kill them all. He still had one necropolis here, and he did go to harass the orc expansion. I don't know why he did that, but in any case, once the orc TP's in, he's gonna kill both of these heroes. And one stomp, just one right click hex, and then they all die. So we see here that the undead basically lost his heroes, and now he's losing his last expansions. He has no lumber to build anything, and he left the game. So at this point, it was just a final 1v1 between me and the Truman Show, the German player. And basically France lost the game. He left first, but he will probably finish third. Then the Peruvian bomber left, so it's basically now the other Peruvian, me, against the German player. So at this point, I knew that it was just a final 1v1, and I did have the resources, so I had to go 100 because the first time I fought him with 80 against 100, I got demolished. So I had to be sure now that we had to be on similar or even levels of population. I did decide to buy some items just to be safe. And after that, just try to go for his expansions, try to slow him down a little bit. I did have 2 expansions at that time. I think that's all I needed. My main base was I had 1.6k just in case. But while he had 1, 2, 3, and 4 expansions, I did have only 2. So those 10 population might have made a difference. I think sometimes that's what you want to. That's what you have to decide, whether you wanna have a little bit more income and lose the fights, or win the fights but lose units in the process and not have enough gold to recover those units. So it's like a trade-off, and at least for me in this game, it did work. This is the first time we tried to engage. He did catch a couple of my tanks here undefended, so I had to return and try to fight. After this, right here he lost a lot of bats, so that was not really good. If he had used all of those bats, then maybe the fight would have been way more even. So he was forced to TP out, and I was able to clean this expansion right here. So once his expansion goes down, he still has 3.7k and he's at 84, so he can recover with no problem. But now that we're gonna fight near his main base, he better be sure that that he doesn't lose that much, because otherwise he's just gonna snowball and he will inevitably lose the game in the long run, in the short run actually, because it's with this many griffins, tanks, and panda level 6, it's not that easy to recover. In any case, at this point it was like having 2 expansions against 2 expansions, an army of maybe 100 versus 100 or 90 versus 90. The one thing that he has going for him is that the units that he produces do come back, or they appear very fast, so he has them right there at the moment to defend, while my units have to travel all the way from the 7 o'clock. But other than that, I think that the fight should have been very even. He does TP out. I guess he wanted to reposition, or maybe reposition and get some more units, maybe buy some items for his Shadow Hunter TC, etc. But I decided to proceed with these very few units. I just had to continue putting pressure on him, otherwise he could easily recover. Also, I didn't know exactly how much gold he had, so for all I knew he could have 10,000 gold, just as much as I did have, so and that would have been very problematic. I do believe I lost my paladin here, even though, yeah, I did lose. I mean, that stomp, hex, and just constant right click is a pain, and it's really hard to avoid. In any case, here my panda is actually doing most of the work with the Breath of Fire and the Blizzard, so in some sense I did lose my paladin, but in general I'm still doing fine. The Blade Master didn't use TP here for some reason, and he ended up dying. As for that DC, he does have reincarnation, so he should be fine for now. Blade Master TP's back, TP's out again with very few units. He's still producing bats, so he could possibly defend against griffins. But now his new threat are tanks. I believe my tanks just arrived, so with these tanks I will be able to at least get some of these towers, maybe buildings, so in the long run my advantage will continue to increase. In any case, here I'm forced to use my Stone of Health for my panda, otherwise he would have died. And the fight continues here because this isn't nearly over. I mean, if his Blade Master gets back into that fight, then it's just game over. I mean, it's not game over, but it would make my position, my advantage, very difficult to hold. In any case, he does TP again, so he wasted a lot of gold in TPs. I don't know if he did buy those TPs before we even started fighting, or if he bought them right there at the moment from the Voodoo Lounge. He does have one torrent, but he lost most of his bestiaries, so he will not be producing any more wyverns, which are the counter to griffins. So I have to be careful here with my panda, and I do use the Breath of Fire just in time, so he loses his Shadow Hunter. And after he lost his TC, I believe he ended up leaving the game because there was really not much to do for him. So yeah, this should be game right here. And he called GG. So that was a very short game. Some of the games this season have been that long. I mean, only 30 to 40 minutes. Others have been longer, but I think the advantage, not the advantage, but one aspect of this season is that we have new players from solo background who do not follow strictly the quote-unquote rules from FFA, you know, those rules that say, okay, let me expand, let me creep as much as I want, let me do this and that. No, they just play their own style, and because of that, some of the games have turned out to be much shorter, and I do like that in general, because no one really likes to be sitting playing free-for-all with the other players for 3-4 hours. That's a little bit tedious in my opinion. But okay, so the map was La Rosa Náutica. It was a fine map, really. It's one of my favorites. I think that out of the 4 or 5 maps that I have created, this one is perhaps, it's not only one of the latest, but also one of my favorites, because I have implemented or incorporated everything I had learned the last year during the Maker World contest. In any case, I might upload a few more videos, but just very short games, 30 to 40 minutes, something like that, in the near future, maybe from round 2 of this season. So I hope I can keep in touch. Alright everyone, this has been Zs.SuperCumulo, and have a good day. Bye bye.